the use of force and fireworks. Second, when I tried to imagine Trump, that's the second term, this is the only thing that came to mind, was the tweeting president, endless, insane tweets. At 6 o'clock in the morning the other day, a series of tweets, and now he's being wiretapped by the Obama administration, and a bombshell news to everyone else, followed by an attack on Arnold Schwarzenegger for wrecking the ratings on his repugnant television show. So that's Trump. And then free speech. And that has several different dimensions. We can talk about the legal constitutional question. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. There are a few key passages here. Congress shall make no law. It doesn't specifically state other people, but after the 14th Amendment and incorporation, this principle is applied to other units of government, the states and then the localities, which under American law are creatures of the state governments. So governments are restricted, but it does not follow that private persons are restricted, that you therefore have a right to go into a Catholic church and shout obscenities or denounce the Pope or something like that. The First Amendment does not protect that. And that's a very important distinction. I remember when Father Curran at Catholic University, which is where I did a degree, was not allowed to teach moral theology. Many people said his First Amendment rights were violated. This is nonsense. At Catholic University, his contractual rights were recognized by the university. He taught, but for purposes of becoming a Roman Catholic priest, the course in moral theology did not count to the qualification. You have to take it again from another professor. Okay, that's consistent with free speech. His contractual rights at the university were respected, and they just said, we do not certify this course. It had nothing to do with the First Amendment. Entirely was about Catholic Church managing its own university, its own properties. But there's a third dimension, which is a moral dimension. And I'll go through some of the arguments from John Stuart Mill. I just had the pleasure of rereading On Liberty. It's a great read, and it is worth reading with some care. And this is a very important point, especially in a university setting. He who knows only his own side of the case knows little of that. If you want to understand your own beliefs, you need to understand the beliefs of people who oppose you. And indeed, you should be able to argue their case better than they can. That's a sign you really get it. And when you can do that and still believe the case you're upholding presently, you really understand it. You have a deep commitment at that point. And it's very important that it's not enough that he should hear the opinions of his adversaries from his own teachers. In the context, for instance, of censorship in Europe, it was argued, we will get rid of these heretics, but it's okay because we have proper theologians who will explain their errors to the congregation. And Mill and others argued that's not good enough. You need to have people who really believe those things making the case. Because if I don't believe it and I merely describe it to you for the purposes of refuting it, it's not being given its best shot. And he argued you really need not to shut people up even when they uphold views you think are abhorrent and wrong on every account. It's harm to yourself. It's also harm to that other person. Now let's turn a little bit to campus politics today, and I think that this is put very neatly. Professor Melissa Clark, interesting enough, professor of journalism at the University of Missouri, when a student journalist came and was trying to do what every student had the right to do on that campus, which was to stand there and take videotape and record. That's all he did. Her famous statement, which he recorded, "Hey, who wants to help me get this reporter out of here? I need some muscle over here." That was the response to the professor of journalism, and that's about shutting people up. Use muscle to shut them up. And then recently, at Middlebury College, you can see the whole video online if you want to. This was very disturbing. Charles Murray, who is frankly, a mild-mannered social scientist, he has many controversial opinions. He was going to speak about his latest book, which I think many of the audience would have benefited from hearing. It's about class stratification in American society, which he thinks is a very serious, looming problem. He was not allowed to speak. The chants for racist, sexist, anti-gay, Charles Murray go away. As he has many gay friends and is an outspoken friend and supporter of gay marriage, this was clearly added because it rhymed. I do not believe he's racist. I don't believe he's sexist. But that is a topic for discussion, not for just drowning someone out. And then, your message is hatred. We cannot tolerate it. This went on for 20 minutes. He was not allowed to speak, even though it had been read that the university policy was people who disrupt lecturers will face disciplinary issues within the university, including expulsion. And these chants were led by faculty members. And the Professor Stanger, who accompanied him, who was later physically assaulted and suffered a neck injury from the assault from people who disrupted the talk, said it was the worst day of her life to look out in the audience and see faculty members who had told her, we have never read a single word by this man, we had never heard him speak, and we never will, because he will not be allowed ever to speak on this campus. So the question is, we cannot tolerate it. Where did that come from? Particularly in a university setting and the no platform movement. People who have views we don't like must be denied any platform, which is not merely we will not offer one. We'll come back to Milo Yiannopoulos. I find him a repugnant attention whore, to be just quite frank, and I would not invite him as my guest. But it does not follow I can tell other people they may not do that and disrupt their event. That's a very different stance. So where did that come from? And it actually has a clearly identifiable source. A professor at the University of California, San Diego, Herbert Marcuse. He was a student of Martin Heidegger, the National Socialist, a Nazi philosopher, a completely repugnant character I'll talk about in a moment. He did his Habilitationsschrift, which is the second doctorate in Germany, under him, and Marxist. He's a kind of National Socialist Marxist, if you will. And in his very important 1965 essay, he laid down what was to follow. What is required to achieve liberation? The withdrawal of toleration of speech and assembly from groups and movements which promote aggressive policies, armament, chauvinism, discrimination on the grounds of race and religion, or which expose the extension of public services, social security, medical care, etc. Moreover, the restoration of freedom of thought may necessitate, very interesting, the restoration of freedom of thought, and then he says, means there won't be any, may necessitate new and rigid restrictions on teachings and practices in the educational institutions which, by their very methods and concepts, serve to enclose the mind within the established universe of discourse and behavior, therefore precluding a priori a rational evaluation of the alternatives. I ran into this also not too long ago at the University of Namibia. I gave a talk there, and one of the old Marxist politicians came, and he denounced me. He said, you are telling us that Julius Nyerere was wrong, famous African socialist leader in Tanzania. But he was right. And you have no right to tell our students he was wrong because they don't know what to think. You can imagine how this went over with the young Namibian students in the audience. To be told by this old man, they don't know what to think. And therefore, you must not be allowed to come here and speak with them. And the Namibian libertarians laughed uproariously at this expression of Stalinism that we heard. Now, Marcuse recently made an appearance in popular culture in the movie Hail Caesar. It's an immensely amusing, funny movie. I recommend it very highly. About Hollywood, in which a group of Marxist scriptwriters go on strike because they're not getting the full value of their labor. And they do it in this fabulous, unbelievable mansion overlooking the sea. And they're angry, and so all this Marxist rhetoric. And Herbert Marcuse here, played by John Bluthal, represents Marcuse, who's leading the ideological charge for more millions to the oppressed screenwriters. Now, Marcuse was not just a comic figure. He left, in my opinion, a very poisonous legacy, especially with regard to university administration, speech, debate, and so on. Now, a few more quick quotes. The historical calculus of progress, which is actually the calculus of the prospective reduction of cruelty, misery, suppression, seems to involve the calculated choice between two forms of political violence. He's very clear. He advocates political violence because he says there's two forms. You cannot escape it. That on the part of the legally constituted powers by the legitimate action or by their tacit consent, namely, when they allow people to speak and say bad things, they are exercising violence. Think that through. When you allow someone to speak, it is an exercise of violence, or by their inability to protect and prevent violence, and then on the part of potentially subversive movements. He represents, as he saw it, the subversive movement. And they were going to use violence. Because, this is why the essay is called Repressive Tolerance. The most oppressive form of violence you can visit on people is to tolerate them having wrong opinions. Right? That is violence. This is a very twisted logic, but it is the one that he followed out, and I recommend reading his essay. It's short and chilling. That violence meant cancellation of the liberal creed of free and equal discussion, intolerance even toward thought, opinion, and work. This is exactly what we have been seeing increasing. Intolerance not toward violence. I'm intolerant toward violence, if you want to put it that way. Intolerance toward thought. Listen to that. Intolerance toward thought. You will not be allowed to think thoughts that Professor Marcuse does not approve of. If you read 1984, what is the most insidious crime? It is thought crime. And Marcuse was articulating. I should point out, by the way, for those who know the book 1984, we are in room 101. If you know that, room 101 is the one thing you fear more than anything else in the world. The case of Winston was rats. The case of Marcuse is freedom of speech. One thing he fears more than anything else. So we have here, we condemn freedom of speech that hurts other people's feelings. This is another articulation of this. So let's turn back to Milo. He calls his talk shows. He is clearly a kind of entertainer. That's how he presents himself. And he's very provocative. This is not, in my opinion, one of the deeper thoughts of the last decade. Feminism is cancer. I don't know what it means, but it's provocative. It's just makes people angry. If you like feminism and you don't like cancer, really, who doesn't? That's provocative. And as he says here, this is, again, displaying the fact he's homosexual, therefore he can say outrageous, insulting, terrible things, because he's in a protected class. This is a very clever rhetorical move. Look, I don't mean to be rude. Of course, this is false, by the way. It doesn't mean to be rude. Most of the reason I went gay, this is absurd, is so I didn't have to deal with nutty broads. That's puzzling provocations. But he also issued a challenge in one of the few really interesting interviews on the Rubin Report. This is him building a wall with some hunky model, the American flag. That freedom, he's his challenge, that freedom from ever being challenged in anything, that freedom from ever having to encounter something with which you might disagree, or something might make you uncomfortable, something that might ridicule you, that's the definition of freedom that has taken hold on the left in America today, and it is poisonous. So when he comes down to trying to defend himself, this is his, let's say, his strongest suit. He claims he's really defending free speech by coming and insulting people and calling them trannies and being rude and offensive. But let's look at some of what he likes to do. He's been compared to Lenny Bruce. Some people may remember Lenny Bruce. He was a pioneer of free speech and, frankly, vulgar speech, not to be criminalized and imprisoned for saying vulgar things. But this is Milo on sexual harassment. Someone touched my breast. How awful. This is with scare quotes. What's a woman really telling you there? She's telling you that someone is sexually interested in her. It's a sort of bragging, isn't it? That really is a gross and offensive thing to say. That a woman who's been assaulted and tells you about it, she's bragging that someone found her interesting. That's why I find him a repulsive attention whore. When he uses his own term, he calls himself a troll. I think attention whore captures it better. He gave a talk and mocked a transgender student and showed the student picture up here and mocked this student. Said, well, no, namely, it's not working. The way that you know he's failing is that I almost still bang him. This is quite vulgar. And attempted to say, me, look at me. See how vulgar and crude I can be. I can shock you. And succeed. This was the real Lenny Bruce, who I do think was an important figure in American free speech movement, being arrested for saying naughty words in 1961. And he really did a lot to free up our language. Now, Milo claims he's just opposing identity politics. All these identities out there. All I'm saying is I'm against it. And I think that's wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. He has created or called into being a new kind of identity politics. And a very scary one. He was interviewed in Business Week. Yiannopoulos says, you need to go, I won't be heard. You've got a class coming up. White supremacists make up a tiny fraction of the alt-right. He introduced this term into more mainstream discourse. It had before that been in tiny little corners of the internet among scary people who have secret Nazi rooms in their basements. And he introduced it now to a much wider audience through his writing. And one, Richard Spencer, he says he doesn't approve of them, though he's not going to kick Spencer out of his event. Spencer is a real National Socialist. That's just undeniable. I don't see it as a bad thing that I surround myself with edgy people. Well, okay. If you want to call Nazis edgy, we're going to have a terminological dispute. I find them profoundly repugnant. And he really did introduce this group, what she calls the alt-right, and Breitbart magazine. Steve Bannon is the publisher, bragged, we created a platform for the alt-right. This is the alt-right. And you see the amusing salutes there, which I don't find very amusing. And Richard Spencer saying, hail Trump, hail our people, hail victory. This is not subtle. Okay? Hail victory in German is Sieg Heil. And he even used the expression, he said, the lying media, someone videotaped it and put it online, or shall I use the original term, die Lügenpresse, which means the lying media. And that was the term the Nazis used to delegitimize the media in Germany. So this is not even subtle, what he represents. And I do think that Milo and others bear responsibility for this. You get one, identity politics. There's a libertarian or classical liberal response to reject that and believe in individual human dignity. The other collectivist response is to formulate another alternative identity politics. That's what they've done. And I think Make America Great, again, captured that in a subtle, coded way. The time when white men ran everything. That is the coded message that they are broadcasting. And it comes with all the other elements of collectivism. Zero-sum mentality. If you gain, I lose. If I lose, you gain. Very group-oriented mentality. Conflicts of groups. A penchant for violence. And disregard for rules and norms. And this movement is flourishing all over Europe and taking root, unfortunately, in the United States as well. It has many new names. Nazi having a somewhat bad odor. They don't use that. Or fascist. They call themselves identitarian, race realist, human biodiversity. That's a nice way of talking about white supremacism. Because there's just a variety of different races, and some happen to be superior to others. So they call that human biodiversity. Traditionalist, which is not what you think. Doesn't mean people who like, traditional Christmas parties or something. Can we take it later? And I will remember you. And then this term alt-right. They have conferences. This is one coming up in Sweden, Identitarian Conference Publishing Houses. And it is a huge, tidal wave is too strong, but a big swelling in the last 10 years. And I'm pretty sure we know where the money is coming from. It's coming from the Kremlin. From Vladimir Yakunin, the former head of the State Railway Administration, and Konstantin Malofeev, who are fascist figures in Russia, multi-billionaire cronies of the Kremlin, of Putin, And they're pouring money into this. We are now seeing across Europe identitarian movements. This is Magyar Garda of the Jobbik party. This is unfortunately the second largest party in Hungary. But today I'm going to Budapest in a few days. This is the leader of the parliamentary fraction of the Our People's Party of Slovakia. Notice these snappy uniforms, not what we come to expect of liberal European democracies. And this is the Golden Dawn insignia. It's a Greek fascist party in the parliament. All these are in European parliament also. Does it look familiar? It's just a coincidence. As they would say. It's just a traditional Greek thing you'll see on Greek columns. There's no connection to any other European movement. This is, of course, a lie. All of these people are very clear Hitler admirers, anti-Semites, and Nazis. We're entering a new era of conflict, and this is why I think people who believe in liberty, I have a very broad tent on this, not just people who agree with me on 100% of issues, but a broad understanding of a free and open society, which encompasses a wide range of political perspectives, have to get ready for this. Because this is not a matter of not being educated about slavery. Only we could explain the consequence of these policies, they would agree with them. It's very, very different. They don't want equality before the law. They like politics based on explicitly unequal identities. They don't believe in your right to disagree, and they will not defend your right to do so. They have resurrected ideas of collective identity that we thought were gone in 1945. And if you follow German politics, the language now coming from the AfD, Alternative für Deutschland, about eine völkische Gemeinschaft is language we have not heard since 1945. And it is reappearing. And it's very chilling to people who know the history of the period. They think that all trade is a zero-sum game. International trade is a plot against the working class, or the nation, or the race, or some combination. They consider democratic politics a fraud. Debate is just a sham, and the underlying reality of social life is unending conflict. That is their vision of human sociality. And the key is they don't want to live and let live. You might say, can't we all get along? The answer is no. They do not want to get along. They believe in suppression of some groups by others. And this has left-wing and right-wing flavors. It's not just on the far right or on the far left. And both of them I trace to a common source. Martin Heidegger. This is Marcuse. Many years ago, he did his dissertation, Habilitation. Under Heidegger, he was so excited about Heidegger's writing, and he wanted to fuse it with Marxism because of the way in which it attacked liberalism. Liberalism understood its broad, classical understanding of free society. Heidegger himself was very clear in his important lectures. Logic is the question concerning the essence of language, which actually has nothing to do with logic. It's a very strange lecture course. We have the advantage that the question of who we ourselves are is timely. It's distinguished from the time of liberalism, the I time. Now is the we time. Now is the we time. Who are we? And for him, it was das deutsche Volk, the German folk. It's almost untranslated. It doesn't mean people in English. It means something more organic than the English term people. And one of his other colleagues, a friend, Carl Schmitt, was very popular, and I first ran into him on far left writings, in his book, The Concept of the Political. It's a very readable book, and frankly, highly intelligent attack on libertarianism. You want to read a very smart attack by someone who in some sense got it. He did read libertarian ideas, Franz Oppenheimer, Joseph Schumpeter, and others, and he said they're all wrong, and here's why. So it's a very intelligent attack on libertarian principles. But he talked about the distinction in the politics is reduced between friend and enemy, which in German is more melodious, Freund und Feind. That is what distinguishes politics. It is not just the distinction between your neighbor you don't get along with because the dog barks all night or something like that. What is the enemy? An enemy exists only when at least potentially one fighting until people confronts a similar collectivity. And this mentality is a very deep attack on classical liberal ideas. Says you cannot have friends unless you have enemies. What makes us friends is the fact that we have the same enemies. That's a very interesting approach. No understanding there can be friendship based on all the categories of Aristotelian friendship. Aristotle in the fifth book of the Nicomachean Ethics has a very great discussion of kinds of friendship. No. The true friend is the one who has the same enemies as you. And so our community is created by our opposition to the other. Now that is not just right-wing. In the sense, Schmidt was a socialist, leading juridical thinker of the Third Reich. It's a little embarrassing when leftists cite him, because they always have to kind of put him in a deep footnote someplace. But also, on the left, he is embraced. If you know Slavoj Žižek, the most prominent Marxist philosopher in Europe, and he talked about his being a Schmittian is not the relationship to an external other as the enemy, a way of disavowing the internal struggle which traverses the social body. In contrast to Schmidt, a leftist position should insist on the unconditional primacy of the inherent antagonism as constitutive of the political. The inherent conflict between white, black, rich, poor, gay, straight, male, female, all of the other forms of differentiation of human groups, that is what constitutes our life as a polity, is the inherent antagonism. And this is where that phrase you may have heard from leftist dogma, the personal is the political. That's what that means. It means that you are in constant struggle against other kinds of identity. By the way, he's incorrect about this. It's not in contrast to Schmidt. Schmidt writes very clearly that there is an internal antagonism within German society. Who was the eternal other within German society? The Jews. And he led the famous 1937 conference in the de-Jewification of the German university. Expulsion not only of Jewish professors and students, not only of books written by Jews, but the expulsion of Jewish ideas, whatever that means. The expulsion of the Jewish spirit from the German university. Now those identitarian names, movements are emerging in Europe, and there's a very interesting figure, this man, Alexander Dugin. He was a founder of a party called the Eurasianist Party, the National Bolshevik Party in Russia in the early 1990s. Here he is with their flag. It looks familiar. It's a German Nazi flag, but instead of a swastika, it's a hammer and sickle, because they promised to deliver the best of Hitler and Stalin. Kind of minority flavor, but that was what they promised. Here he is with the teaching at the University of Thessaloniki in Greece with the current Greek foreign minister, who's one of his followers. These people are much more influential than you might think. Here he is with his good friend in Moscow. Anyone recognize him? David Duke. The intergalactic Grand Kleagle Dragon something of the KKK, who is closely aligned with Dugin. Here he is giving an insane speech with the symbol of his movement, Eurasianism, expansion in all directions. He's a pretty frightening character and has been a very important figure in Russian politics. In 2006, he wrote a book on geopolitics, which has been largely the ground plan for Kremlin undermining of liberal democracy. It's a very good book by Peter Pomerantsev, which I recommend. Really well written. Nothing is true and everything is possible. And what we've been seeing in the assault on liberal democracy is a new kind of propaganda, postmodern totalitarian propaganda. And it's very different from what we thought we saw in the previous decades. The Soviet Union, Third Reich, and so on said, our system is better. They don't bother to do that. They say everything is crap. Nothing is better than anything else. You think you have freedom of speech? Well, look at, and they'll bring up terrible bad cases. You have no freedom of speech, no more than we do, which is not true. But so that mentality now is systematically undermining liberal democracy around the world. Let's turn a little bit to Trump. The fake news media is not my enemy. It is the enemy of the American people. That was translated directly from the German also. Volksfeinde, the enemies of the people. This is a most disturbing phrase. Most disturbing. It has always been used with savage impact afterwards. The enemy of the people. We've heard it in many languages. From the French Revolution, the first time it really popped up, and so on. And then the opinion of this unbiased find quite disturbing elements in our institutions. And then this remarkable statement, I caught it just as he was saying it, I am your voice. And that is a statement of an authoritarian mentality. We don't have to listen to all your voices because I am your voice. This is a very ancient statement of what we would today call dictatorship or imperial power. Now Milo is, I pass on here, he's also very eager to restrict the media. He uses this phrase, we're going to open up those libel laws. Turns out people sometimes write things unflattering of him. That can't be allowed. Really? I am Donald Trump. So he sued reporters, famous point. Unfortunately, the New York Times supported the reporter and took it to court. Because the reporter questioned his claims of his net worth, that he's a billionaire. Doesn't seem to be the case. I actually don't know the answer to that question. He sued him, and he admitted in court that he said, I didn't even read his article, I just said sue him, it'll cost him a lot of money. Because we have, in the American legal system, the loser does not pay the court costs of the winner. And this is pretty disastrous, in my opinion. It's a big flaw in our legal system. So rich people can sue you and just cost you a lot of money. And even if they lose, it's a tiny fraction of his money and a big fraction of your money. It's going to hurt you and shut you up. He wants to make it much easier to do that. Loosen up the libel laws so he can sue people who say things he doesn't like. And Milo loves that and stood up for it. He said this is an industry failure when people write things that aren't true, and you should be able to sue them. Now the point is he's not defending current libel law. I can make libelous statements about you and you could have a legal case against me. Not what he's defending. He's saying we should open it up and make it much easier to do that, which is undoubtedly a restriction on freedom of speech. And at the same time, here's what Milo, remember he says, I'm just defending free speech. Well, this is what he says about libertarianism. Libertarians are children. People who have given up looking for an answer. I'm not sure what that means. This whole everybody do what they want is code for leave me to do what I want, I guess, I suppose. It's selfish and childish, and it makes me have given up trying to work out what a good society would look like. In my opinion, a good society looks like one where you don't hit other people when they do things you don't like. Foundational principle of a good society. How the world should be ordered. Actually, I don't know how the world should be ordered. I admit it. I just admit it. I don't know what is the best way for all this stuff in the world to work. Sorry. So I guess that makes me a child. And instead they retreat back into selfishness. That's why they're obsessed with weed, Bitcoin, and hacking. Okay. Whatever. And of course, this is the mature adult character who was criticizing libertarian views. Let's go back to the fake news question. This is another important element. We've heard a lot about it lately. And it is worth discussing. This is fake news, ABC News. Because it's not the same as this one. This is abcnews.com. This is abcnews.com.co. They look pretty similar. This is not ABC News. It's all nonsense. But it's clickbait, crazy stuff. Pope endorses Trump. Another lesbian affair discovered for Hillary. It was like insanity. But it looks like that one. That is actually fake news. And there are other examples. The Denver Guardian. Think, well, I read it in the Denver Guardian. It's just some guy in his basement. Anyone can register denverguardian.com. And it's all made up nonsense. A few others. Liberty Writer News, fun one. American News, full of stuff about killer bees and things like that. The National Report, these are actually all fake news. And then the source of much of it, RT, formerly Russia Today, and Sputnik. These are Kremlin-sponsored propaganda sources, and it's the source of a lot of the stuff that's bounced around this fake news media. So that really is fake news. That's not the same as a free press. And when Trump says that the New York Times, CNN, ABC, NBC, they're all fake news and the enemy of the people, he's playing on our concern with this, which is serious. We don't want to be fooled. We want to know, is it a brand name? Is it the Wall Street Journal or the Wall Street Journal? It looks the same. Which one is it? The difference between the two, between abcnews.com.co and abcnews.com, is when these people make a mistake, there are people who criticize them and they issue a retraction. They have editors who check it. They are legally liable. This one is not. This one likes to make up outlandish stuff and poison discourse about virtually everything. Thomas Jefferson put it very neatly because the attack calling the free press fake news is a prelude to censorship. I'm very concerned about the direction this discussion is going. I like the fact that Jefferson, what he argued, the basis of our government being the opinion of the people, the very first object would be to keep that right. Were it left to me to decide whether we should have a government without newspapers or newspapers without a government, not in the moment for the land. And I think that is the correct approach. We should stand up to this. Now, we have seen an eruption of tribalism, and these people, Milo and Breitbart and Bannon, have let loose, if you will, obscure figures such as this, a white supremacist named Jared Taylor. He always denies I'm a white supremacist. He says, no. The other people will get their place. But where we are, it will be for white people. We will be supreme and our place. And we'll let them have Florida. And he argues that tribalism is a natural nature of human beings. It's tribalistic. I find this deeply, profoundly un-American. It is horror that is being released into our politics, and I do blame Bannon and Milo and Trump for having done this. I love this particular tweet. I thought it was most revealing. When a country is no longer able to say who can, who cannot come in and out, especially for reasons of safety and security, big trouble. Who can and cannot come in and out? In and out? Really? That just was very shocking to me. I'll be very frank, because I travel a lot. I like the fact that when you leave the United States, you don't have to go through passport control. Most countries you do. And I hate that. Who the hell are they to tell me I can't leave? But in the U.S., that has not been the case. You do show a passport. One reason, they don't really care. If you arrive in Portugal or someplace without a passport, the Portuguese government will make them pay to fly you back. So they say, all right, no passport, you don't get on the plane, and visa and so on. They don't really care. But no government official asks to see your passport. And that, I think, is going to change. And Mr. Trump is going to push for this. Now, the next point about freedom of speech, I think we're back in the mode of persecuting heretics. There's a very important book by Sebastian Castellio, and it's on the persecution of heretics. It was one of the most important moments in the struggle for freedom of speech and freedom of religion. With regard to heretics, those with whom we disagree, he says, there's no clear standard of who's a heretic. You go from one city to the next. The one considered orthodox in Hamburg is considered a heretic in Milan. And just go a few miles, and the definition changes as to who's a heretic. He said something that I think we should almost memorize in a debate with John Calvin over the question of the killing of Michael Servetus, who'd been invited into Geneva to discuss, and they captured him and burned him alive. To kill a man is not to defend a doctrine. It is to kill a man. When the Genevans killed Servetus, they did not defend a doctrine, they killed a man. That's what it means. They're not, and we can take it to less extreme examples. When you tell someone to shut up, you're not defending a doctrine, you're just shutting someone up. That's all that they did in Geneva, was to kill him. Shutting down speech doesn't defend the doctrine, it doesn't refute these people, it just stops them from speaking and it stops others from listening. That's all. We have not achieved any kind of agreement. In case not speak, doesn't matter whether it's a clown or a scholar, you haven't defended your doctrine when you just shut another person up. I want to run quickly through some of the arguments that John Stuart Mill gives. There are 4 that he recapitulates in favor of freedom of speech. If any opinion is compelled to silence, that opinion may, for aught we know, that we can certainly know, be true. So if I tell you to shut up, it means I am so confident I am right, no other opinion can be allowed to be expressed. I am completely true in everything, correct in everything. Who can claim that? Secondly, though the silence opinion be an error, it may and very commonly does contain a portion of truth. There might be something you could learn, even if you don't adopt the other opinion. Some criticism of your own view that will cause you to adapt it in some way. Third, even if the received opinion, that is the one you hold, the official doctrine, be not only true but the whole truth, unless it is suffered to be and actually is vigorously and earnestly and will by most of those who receive it be held in the manner of a prejudice, with little comprehension or feeling of its rational ground. So if the only reason that, let's take the question of racism, the only reason you oppose it is because, well, you're just supposed to, you haven't thought about it at all. This hasn't taken hold in your own heart. You need to listen to the other side, in some way be exposed to it, to understand how corrupt it is. And shutting up even a horrible person like David Duke and saying you will not be allowed to speak means that the view of really believing will not be made by people, not hear anyone else. And then finally, the meaning of the doctrine itself will be in danger of being lost or enfeebled. And you've seen this in religious doctrines, deprived of its vital effect on the character and conduct, the dogma becoming a mere formal profession. And I think that's what we've seen with a lot of political correctness. Just a formal profession without an understanding of the deep issues involved about group oppression and the like. So violence and intimidation to stop people from speaking, listeners from hearing. That's all about defending truth. Voluntary action of the period. The whole key of the libertarian approach is creation of force. To read all the beginning. Talk about the of 1759, he gave a series of lectures in his lecture group. He addressed the great trucking. He found it that eventually makes everyone has to persuade. The human beings to engage in persuasion with other people. Even offering a shilling. He says, I'll give you 1 shilling for that service or that meal. Offering an argument that the person can refuse, does not have to accept. Not enough. You need to persuade me more. 1.5 shillings, for example. Persuasion is the key to free society, but it's also the key to liberation. David Duke, in his essay on public opinion, put it very neatly. He explained that the powerful never have enough force to oppress all of society. They never have it. It's only opinion that their power rests on. And I saw that personally in Eastern Germany in 1989. The most important slogans in Leipzig, when people marched against the dictatorship, was not down with communism and so on. It was auf die Straße, onto the streets. Why? No one knew who was supporting the regime and who wasn't. And the police were very brutal. If 8 people came together, they were dealt with swiftly and brutally. But 80 people were harder, 800 people were harder, and 8,000 became almost impossible. And finally, population marching against communism. That was when they lost. I remember on the face of Eric Honecker, it was during the 40th anniversary of the founding of the German Republic. It's a great moment. And these bastards had no idea most people hated them. They didn't know because everyone was afraid. And they realized they're not afraid and they hate us. And if you find the video of Honecker speaking and he hears for the first time the chants and he steps back, he's shocked at that. It's opinion that matters. And we want to change people's opinions for a tolerant and open and free society. Nothing else will work. And I'll do I give them money every month. I'm a very proud sponsor of this organization. I feel good about it. There's a little sound out of my checking account. It sucks out. And it makes me feel good. Because I like the fact that this organization is doing such important things all over the world. On every continent. I'm going to be going tonight to Prague for European Students for Liberty conference, and then Budapest for the Hungarian Students for Liberty events there as well. I work with them all over the world. I was just with Korean Students for Liberty, and I've been with Students for Liberty in Kenya and Nigeria and elsewhere. This is a very important movement, and I want to thank those of you who are members because you make me very proud and you give me hope for the future of an open and free society. Thank you. We started late. I don't know how we are in the room. We'll have to be out at some point.
We have till 6:30.
Okay. Well.
But you can't even sign in. Please.
Okay. So.
You can't. So please, it's super important if you just sign one of these sheets so we know that people came today. It's a big deal for us. Anyway, back to what's important.
Yeah. So one more thing. We are seeking to further advance the principles of free speech and the principles of libertarianism. Why? So that we can have a better, more happy society. So we have we co-sponsored this event with Libertarian, Alexander back there. So let's give it her. If you are interested in working with Students for Liberty to organize further events on this campus, please come talk to me or put a note next to your name on the sign-up sheet. We have campus coordinators and we work with other pro-liberty groups that organize events like this as well. So come talk to me and we'll get you involved. Let's give it up for Tom Palmer one more time. What's that?
We have time for some discussion?
Yeah, we do.
All right. Well, I'm interested in your thoughts also. You're on the ground at universities, and I'm one of the older people in the room, so I'm interested in hearing different perspectives. And you have been very patient, the gentleman here. Yes.
Okay, so I have one clarification question and one real question.
Okay.
The clarification one is, you mentioned Richard Spencer that you consider, and he considers himself a cultural nationalist. So, like a cultural white nationalist. So he thinks white is a culture, and I was trying to steal many of your positions, so trying to like figure out what he could be thinking. And I thought of 3 things. So either like there's 2 options where he has a clear mind. One is he has a clear mind. He's actually a Nazi. He's pretending to be. He also had a clear mind, and they wanted to like actually they didn't intend for cultural nationalism to become racial nationalism. So I'm like curious, or he could just be confused. He thinks that there is such a thing as cultural nationalism, but actually that cannot exist. So I'm like curious about that distinction.
Okay, this is most interesting. And I have spent the last 5 years reading a lot of literature that's very disturbing. It's So lots of literature in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, German and French, most is not translated, of the deep National Socialist and fascist ideas. First point is Spencer made the same move that Nazis made. The conflation of race, culture, and blood. So your second point, is it being deceptive? Yes. And again, it's very distasteful for me to have to get into this literature. Oh, I'm doing this for 5 years. But when you listen to their podcast, they use a term, Hyperborean. What does that mean? Hyperborean, people above the northern, the Arctic Circle. It's code word for Aryan. You have to understand, read these books. That's what they mean. Julius Evola, who was one of the big important fascist thinkers of the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, died in the 70s, used that term, Hyperboreans, because they have a fantasy view. It's totally crazy. When I repeat it to you, you're going to think, this guy's kind of nuts. Please, not you. They believe at one time the Earth was not tilted on the axis of the plane of the orbit around the sun, which meant the North Pole was inhabited. And that's where the Aryans, the special people, lived, the Hyperboreans above the Arctic Circle, because it would have been a temperate climate. Then a cataclysm happened, and it became uninhabitable, and the Aryans came down, and the people of the sun, they call them, and mixed with the mud people. You understand what that means? Right? So they speak in code, but if you know the code, they're Nazis. I don't know how else to put it. Second thing is that when it comes to this question of white culture, he says he wants a white ethno-state. It can be centered in Whitefish, Montana, where his parents were. The people of Whitefish are not enthused about this plan, by the way. Now, his view is, he says, oh, it'll be voluntary. And when one of the people interviewing him said, really? So I was like, well, of course, we would eventually have to use force, and it would probably get really bloody. Oh, okay, that sounds voluntary. It sounds like other ethnic cleansing programs. So that is what he does want. And I don't want to overplay his significance, by the way, as a political figure, except that the special political strategist of the president is one of the people who promoted him. That's why I find this true. There's a deep question. This is about Heidegger. Victor Farias, who's a Chilean scholar, kind of spilled the beans. He was a Nazi, an unrepentant Nazi. And now we have what are called the Schwarze Hefte, the black notebooks, which are full of the most vulgar anti-Semitism imaginable. Unbelievably vulgar, the kind of stuff you'd expect written on a bathroom wall. This is from the greatest philosopher of the 20th century. Scumbag. Horrible, monstrous. Farias pointed this out and led to a great controversy. No, he just was kind of confused. But his philosophy had nothing to do with his National Socialism. Okay, maybe so, right? Dig into it. There's a great book by Manuel Faith, The Reduction of Socialism and Philosophy. It's a very powerful book. It's absolutely false. And one of the most important points, I'll conclude on this, because it's a bit complicated. Heidegger's defenders, which are all throughout the academic left in America, by the way, Jacques Derrida, all the postmoderns, all these people drinking the Heideggerian Kool-Aid. And now they're kind of horrified that he was a cranky, malignant, anti-Semitic dirtbag, a hateful man. So it's a bit of a problem for them. They said, well, he couldn't have been a racist because he denied biological genetic foundations to race. And we all know that it's biology and eugenics that's the foundation of racism. But read his reason for that. He said because race is a spiritual matter, and the reason why he didn't like biology, there was an alternative Nazi theorist who thought that genetics would prove that the Germans were the superior master race. He said that's Anglo-Saxon science and must be rejected as un-Germanic. Why? because Anglo-Saxon science was science in principle capable of falsifying. You can do experiments and doing statistical studies and all those sorts of things. You can show it's not true. And therefore, it would be put in the whole Nazi ideology would be hostage to scientific claims that were capable of being falsified. So that's why he rejected this genetic foundation for it. The second thing related to that was Heidegger and Schmidt also kind of lost out in the power struggle within the Nazi hierarchy and became somewhat marginalized. And people say, see, they weren't real Nazis, despite the hateful anti-Semitism that persisted for both of them throughout their entire lives and the Nazi ideology, not apologizing and on and on. They lost in the power struggle. And one of the issues was, what constitutes a German? He was the Black Forest. And he wanted Science to be included in the highest level of Germanness. Talk about a petty philosophical concern. And they lost out to what were called the Nordicists. This is so arcane, I feel embarrassed discussing it. But within the Nazi ideology, which ran an empire and killed tens of millions of people, there were these ideological conflicts. The Nordicists believed that the blonde hair, blue eyes was the true Aryan one, and the other advocates of other broader Germanism lost. So therefore they say, see, he wasn't really a Nazi. But that, to me, is the same as saying that Trotsky was not a communist because he split Stalin. Right? This doesn't make sense. He was a communist. He was in the faction that didn't win. So finally Stalin had him killed with an ice pick in the head. If someone tried, if Jacques Derrida or one of the Heidegger, someone like that tried to say, Trotsky was not a communist, we know that because he was killed by the leader of the Communist Party. So I'd laugh at it. And that's essentially the defense that has been given of these people, that they weren't really Nazis. Now, in American political language, it's very argumentum ad Hitlerum. If you ever find in an argument, you have to say, well, Hitler did that, you just lost the argument. Right? It's a very bad way of arguing. You're against stop signs. Hitler had stop signs, they're bad. Okay, that can't be right. So I'm very hesitant about using the argumentum ad Hitlerum. It's just a bad argument. In this case, it fits. And when someone stands up and says, hail victory, hail our people, as I said, it's not even such. It's the real thing. Come back. Yes, sir.